And welcome in to Time Out with the Guys. I am Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. Well, it's a pretty big night of sports. We finally are at the point where the NBA draft is going underway right now, and it's been a pretty big week of football, too. Some crazy games happening. Like I said, it is going to be a crazy night, especially for the NBA, which we'll definitely get into here. But boy, I'll tell you what, I'm a little excited for tonight. Some teams are finally going to be able to make those big picks that they've been looking to make for quite some time now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time kind of coming. Obviously, it's been a weird year for obviously the NBA, but it's awesome that they're finally gonna have a draft. Obviously, teams were able to start making trades on Monday. Now the draft tonight. Free agency opens on Friday. So
Yep.
For an NBA fan, it's a great time for this. Unfortunately, if you're a Warriors fan, Klay Thompson obviously suffered some kind of leg injury. The details are unknown right now, but obviously we're hoping for the best for him.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into Klay Thompson here later on, but that is definitely, if you're a Warriors fan, that's a huge blow. Hopefully, though, it's nothing too severe, but if you can't put any weight on that, that's not a good sign, of course. And I know that there are already fears that it could be a torn Achilles maybe. We know he tore his ACL back in Game 6 of the 2019 NBA Finals, and we know that was a huge loss there for the Warriors. But like I said, we'll get into that here later on. But let's start off, though, with some football with the Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals. Kind of an odd game here when you have an AFC East team and an NFC West team going on here. But that was a really cool matchup to see here. Buffalo traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And, boy, this game was something to watch for. Boy, the first half was kind of a little bit okay. It's kind of getting a little boring and stuff. But the second half, it really started to pick up here. But I'll tell you what, though, these two teams right here and these two young quarterbacks and Josh Allen and Kyler Murray, boy, these two really showed what they can do. Kind of had some turnovers here back and forth, but overall, though, it was very impressive to see these two young guys go at it. Kenyon Drake, a big day for him, 16 carries, 100 yards, and Kyler Murray also doing some work with his legs there as well, getting two rushing touchdowns, along with 11 carries for 61 yards. And DeAndre Hopkins, no doubt, you could say he was the MVP of this game. Of course, here, once the highlights come to an end here, you'll see the big play there at the end where he makes the big touchdown there. But I'll tell you what, though, these two teams have really impressed me all season long. We knew that going into the season, Buffalo, of course, having the advantage with Tom Brady not being there with New England. Even though if Tom Brady was still there, I think Buffalo would still be putting up a good fight there for the divisional title. Arizona, we knew that this year was going to hopefully be a good improvement year for them. We know that division there, you have Seattle, Los Angeles, the San Francisco 49ers, of course, but they've been banged up with injuries so far this season, so that kind of gives Arizona a bit more leeway, you could say right there. But I'll tell you what, though, Kyler Murray, he has looked very impressive so far this year, and we knew getting DeAndre Hopkins in that trade with Houston, boy, we knew that this team was going to be something to watch for this coming season.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the Cardinals have been playing really well this season. Kind of like you mentioned, we both thought they were going to be a lot better, and obviously, I think if the 49ers didn't have so many injuries this season, I think this would easily be obviously still a very top team. It's still obviously it's a good division in the NFC West, with all three teams being 6-3, and then obviously the Niners being 4-5. But it's impressive, kind of where they were last year to now where they are right now. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with Kyler Murray improving, as well as getting DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody knew that was going to be a big factor, and it sure has been so far. And we do have to give credit to Buffalo too. I mean, obviously they did kind of choke, and they've kind of been known to do that. Even when the Seahawks played, they had this huge lead, and then the Seahawks cut it down to 7. Obviously, they regained that lead because the Seattle defense is not very good. But Buffalo's been known to do that. They almost lost against the Rams too when they were up by like 28 points, and they just won with a touchdown. So they obviously have to get better at holding on to the lead, because obviously, like you mentioned, the huge play from DeAndre Hopkins to obviously win the game. That things like that happen sometimes in football, where that one play in the third quarter, obviously like we see right now where Kyler Murray runs into the end zone. You look back at him and you wish you could stop it sooner. But give credit to both teams, but obviously give credit to the Cardinals for fighting this one out. I was looking at the score, and I saw there was like less than a minute left, and I just assumed Buffalo won, and then I checked it a little bit later and saw they lost, and I was absolutely shocked. And then I saw the highlight, and then I realized why. So really good game, though. Definitely, obviously, I would say the game of the week just went down to the wire. And
Here it comes right here.
Just an
Just watch this.
impressive Hail Mary by Kyler Murray and a great catch by DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh my gosh, look at that. 3 Bills and 1 Cardinal, and the Cardinal prevailed right there. Boy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too with Buffalo is I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not trying to say I know what they were like thinking and stuff, but when you look at it though, maybe the person thought that when they got that touchdown there towards the end, they thought that's game for us right there. I mean, good luck with Arizona coming all the way to score points with that tough field goal or with the tough field position right there. But I'll tell you what, Arizona, they prevailed dramatically and they came out big right there. And boy, that play no doubt was the play of the week right there, and just very impressive skills by DeAndre Hopkins. And boy, Bill O'Brien right now sitting on his couch right now probably saw that. He was probably just he probably just put his face, like he stuffed his face there in the couch cushion or something, thinking, why did I trade this guy? Why did I do it? Well, hey, that's what you get. And
no longer has a job either.
No, exactly. That's what I meant. He's sitting on his couch right now because he traded him. That was a bad trade. No doubt the worst trade probably of the decade. I mean, hey, it's 2020, but that no doubt will go down as one of the worst trades ever throughout the 2020s. So, but overall though, it was a great game for Buffalo. Like you mentioned, they need to figure out a way to close out games and stuff. Like you mentioned there with the Seahawks, I think they were lucky enough to get that big of enough lead. But then as the game kept going on and stuff, you kind of started to see him starting to flatter away. But luckily, though, Seattle, it was too little too late for them. And Buffalo was able to come out there with the win. But for this matchup right here between the Cardinals, no, Buffalo could not be able to do that. Arizona, they had momentum still on their side. Sure, at times it was not looking good for them. But Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, they found a way to win. And I'll tell you what, I was pretty critical of the Cardinals hiring Cliff Kingsbury because his college record was not spectacular. But reality is, I mean, he coached Patrick Mahomes, so no doubt he did a good job with him and with Kyler Murray. He said, if I had that first pick, I'd be taking him. Well, what a coincidence. You got hired as the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and you had the first pick. So there you go right there. And so he stuck to his word, even though at the time he said it, he was not even in position to be the coach at the time. But overall, though, it was a great game, no doubt. No doubt one of the best matchups of the week. And that's what you like in football, of course, is when you have these teams that are no doubt on the rise going after each other, and one team just comes out by a few points. That's always good to see. So always fun to see these types of matchups happening, even if you're not a fan of both teams.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, obviously, both teams have really improved. Obviously, the Bills have been kind of improving these last 2 years. They've been giving the Patriots a little bit of trouble the last 2 years, and obviously now that Tom Brady's gone, like you mentioned, they kind of own that division in a way. But Miami, right there too, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Those are going to be some good matchups. I think they play at least one more time, in the next few weeks. So that's going to be a good game. Obviously, the Cardinals still have a lot of work in the NFC West as well. They play Seattle, which we'll talk about later tomorrow night. So that will be obviously another tough and good game, hopefully. But yeah, just two really good teams going at it. Obviously, I think kind of something that we should mention too is that that the Bills, Josh Allen has been playing pretty good on the offensive side of things too. He's been really improving over the last few years, and these are just two really young quarterbacks that are really just going to be awesome to watch as the years unfold. And as a football fan, obviously not a huge fan of either of these teams, but as a football fan, you definitely have to appreciate it.
Oh, no doubt you do. It's always good when you can see the greatness come out of these teams, even if you're not particularly a fan. I know, of course, with the Cardinals, you kind of have a little thing right there because there was Seattle in their division. I totally get that. It's like with the Packers, Vikings, and Lions. Hey, I appreciate the greatness that Aaron Rodgers provides to the league. Now, do I like him when he plays the Bears? No, of course I don't. Of course I don't like him. But no, I appreciate though because he's a great player. I'm not going to deny that at all. And if he gets another Super Bowl ring, good for him. He honestly deserves it. So if the Packers no doubt get to that point where they're competing for a championship, if they good for A-Rod, he definitely is a guy that needs at least 2 or 3 Super Bowl rings, not just one particular. Kind of like with Drew Brees. And, of course, a tough break for Drew Brees, too. He's out with an injury right now, collapsed lung, which is not what you want to hear. So, but anyway, though, good matchup right there. Let's go to another dominating matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. And this was a divisional matchup for the NFC South, and Tampa Bay scoring 46 points, just dominating throughout the game. Carolina at first looked pretty good, but then Tampa Bay said nope, scoring all double digits there throughout the second, third, and fourth quarters. And for Tampa, they were able to prevail after a tough loss there to the Saints the previous week. Tom Brady looked spectacular, 28 out of 39, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ronald Jones, the big game for him. Thank you for the fantasy points, by the way. 23 carries, 192 yards, 1 touchdown, so no doubt he was the MVP for the Buccaneers offense. And, of course, the receivers doing a good job, too. Chris Godwin, 92 yards receiving. Mike Evans, not a bad day for him. 77 receiving yards, 1 touchdown as well. Gronkowski, 51 yards, but did get a touchdown as well. For Carolina, just a bit of a tough day for them. After the first quarter, they really just started to fade her away. And unfortunately for Tampa Bay, they had the momentum throughout their entire game. And Tom Brady, boy, I'll tell you what, at 43 years old, this was a guy that we were thinking, could he still play at a high level, and already over 20 passing touchdowns this season. Yeah. We knew going into this season with Tom Brady, he was going to have a really good receiving core. When you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and now of course he has Antonio Brown there as well, who finally got to play this past week. So not a bad debut for him. And then of course he has Gronk back with him as well. So no doubt Tom Brady, this is no doubt one of the best receiving cores he's had in such a long time, back probably since 2009 with Randy Moss, Wes Welker, and Deion Branch with New England. So no doubt Tom Brady is back to having those really good elite receivers around him. So he's able to do a lot more there throwing the football and stuff. But either way, though, like I said, a tough day for the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, after the first quarter right there, scoring 14 points, just not what they needed. 3 points in the second, 0 in the third, and only 6 in the fourth. That's not going to do it for you right there in Tampa Bay. Like I said, they had momentum throughout this entire game. They never looked back.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, this was a really good bounce-back game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who lost terribly to the New Orleans Saints just a week ago. So, obviously, for them to come out, beat a divisional opponent, 46-23. Obviously, like you mentioned, Tom Brady having a really fantastic game. It was very much needed, especially in the division that the Saints are currently in first place for right now. So you have to win all the games now, especially that you don't play the Saints anymore, and obviously unless they play in the postseason, for example. So you pretty much have to win all these divisional games, no doubt about that, and win every other game too if you want to have a chance of obviously winning the division out. You don't want to be a wild card, but obviously Tom Brady's done that in the past too. So, but yeah, he has a lot of weapons. Especially compared to last year where it seemed like he really didn't have anybody to throw to. Obviously, Julian Edelman's obviously getting older. He's injured this year as well. He's missed a few weeks. So it kind of just shows you that, Father Time always catches up to you unless you're Tom Brady for the most part. So,
yeah.
But obviously having Gronkowski with him too, very familiar target on the team. There's just a lot of guys that can do pretty much anything on the offensive side of things, which makes obviously a GOAT quarterback in Tom Brady's life a little bit easier. So obviously really good game for him. Panthers obviously struggled without Christian McCaffrey. Once again, another obviously a tough loss for the Panthers not having him. He's obviously their best player, no doubt about it. But he's been out for a majority of the season now. So you just hope he comes back sooner than later because this team definitely needs him, especially on the offensive side of things. I still like Teddy Bridgewater at the quarterback position. I just think, this is first year with a new team. I think it's going to take some time. Obviously, not having McCaffrey, it's huge. So, I think this is just one of the years, kind of like I mentioned last show, that you just kind of have to put in your back pocket, reflect on, and then move on for next season and get better from it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And of course, Christian McCaffrey, we know what type of player he is. Just being a dominating player, not just running the football, but catching the football too. Yeah. He's a big asset for that Panthers offense, and no doubt that's a huge loss for him. When he came back, it was that was a sigh of relief for Carolina, but then right away he ends up getting hurt again. So no doubt it's been a tough year for Christian McCaffrey. Just not what you want to see. He is one of the best players in the league, so hopefully he gets healthy soon. I know this season for the Panthers probably not what they wanted, but like I said, with Teddy Bridgewater, it's the first year with a new team, has to kind of learn a new chemistry and stuff, a new coach there as well, there in Matt Rule. And, of course, with COVID, just who knew what was going to happen this season with all the uncertainty that could have happened. So a lot of teams this year are lucky enough to be playing. So definitely I would for Carolina, get into that positive offseason mode, and then come out next season, have a good draft, have a good free agency if you can, and then just try and come out next season. They're competing with the Saints, competing with Tom Brady, and then who knows what Atlanta is going to do as well. So that division could be tough next year. We'll see what happens with that. But Tampa Bay, though, they ride away with the win, 46-23. Now moving on to oh gosh.
Hey, we can skip it if you want.
No,
we don't have to talk about it.
no,
'Cause we got to talk about the Seahawks after this, and I also don't want to.
Well, I'll go first. Bears suck. Period. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was an ugly game. I think we do have to give a little bit of credit to the Vikings. They've been playing really good the last few weeks. Obviously, Dalvin Cook has just been incredible. Obviously, the Vikings have beat the Packers, the Bears, and also the Lions, their last 3 wins. So obviously, all divisional opponents, and it's a pretty, it's a tighter division now. Obviously, the Lions are 4-5, Vikings 4-5, Bears 5-5, and then the Packers 7-3. So obviously, the Packers are still ahead by 2 games, but this is kind of a defensive-oriented game for the most part. Obviously, Chicago, like we mentioned before on the show, is a defensive-first team.
Mm-hmm.
The offense just can't do anything. They really can't. They've had injury problems at the running back position, which have hurt.
Yep.
So it just Nick Foles obviously has not looked the same since those first games that he was playing in. He just hasn't looked the same.
And he's hurt now.
And he's hurt now. Also, he got hurt at the end of that game, so you don't know about his status. Obviously, the Bears are on a bye week right now, so they'll be able to play, in 2 weeks from now. And hopefully, he'll be back for that. But yeah, Kirk Cousins finally broke the streak of 0-10 on Monday Night Football, or 0-11 or whatever it was. So he finally got his first Monday Night Football victory. So feel happy for him. But the Vikings have been playing better. Obviously, the Bears have what is this, four losses in a row now?
Yeah, four losses.
So obviously they've hit a little bit of a bump in the road, and hopefully when they can come back from the bye week, they'll figure some things out on offense. But the offense, it doesn't look good. Defense is looking great, though. I mean, they're definitely a top defense in this league, and that's why they can keep the score low, but also why their score is also low, because the offense can't do anything. So,
well, exactly. That's just the thing. You have an offense. Like, I get it. This offense is not made of spectacular players, but, okay, you have a quarterback. Okay, first off, in Mitch, who I don't know what happened to him. Back in 2018, he was money Mitch, and then all of a sudden, ever since the start of last season, he just was not what he was not what he once was back in 2018, and now of course he's dealing with a shoulder injury. And honestly, Matt Nagy, he surrendered the play calling duties finally to the offensive coordinator, but that certainly didn't really work out on Monday night as well. And for the Bears, they hung in there throughout most of the game. And my dad called me last night and gave me a buttload of crap because I said that the Bears were going to win 21-13. I mean, I was almost right with the score prediction.
Yeah.
Vikings, because they missed they missed the extra point, and then whatever it was, and the Bears offense just could not get anything going right there. I mean, they did a good job there with Dalvin Cook. I mean, yes, he did get 96 rushing yards, but that's on 30 carries though.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
So honestly, the Bears defense did a good job of containing him. Justin Jefferson, the rookie, he's had a phenomenal rookie season so far, but. This Bears offense, like I get it, they're not made of spectacular players, but Allen Robinson, he's a really good receiver. Anthony Miller, still has room for improvement. Cordell Patterson, no doubt, he had a great game against his former team, the Vikings. Had the kickoff return, which was really good to see for a touchdown. So that's always fun to see, right there. But defense did their part. Offense, though, I don't know what the deal is right here. People were saying this could be Nagy's last year, but I'm just thinking, well, first off, the guy has not, he has not had a losing season at all yet. I mean, of course, this is his 3rd year, 12-4 back in 18, 8-8 last year in 19. But I don't know, something's gonna have to happen with Chicago. That offense is just, they're struggling. They've never been an offensive team. I get it. They're called the Monsters of the Midway for a reason because of defense, but. Still, this offense does not need to be lacklustering like they are so far this season. That's just not how it's supposed to be. We'll see what happens, but yeah, it's just that was pretty pathetic to watch. For Monday Night Football, I would call it mediocre night football with those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, You pretty much said it all. I mean, it obviously was kind of a boring game, defensive oriented for the most part. Obviously, the offense for the Bears really struggled. The only touchdown they had was from Patterson on the kickoff return.
No.
Obviously, Kirk Cousins had a solid game for the most part. Through those 2 touchdowns to Adam Thielen. So obviously, he's been kind of the go-to guy for the last few years. He's been in Minnesota. So, he's. Kirk Cousins is playing better, like I mentioned, the last few weeks, and it's a tight division. It could really go down to the wire, and you just got to win those division games. If you're both the Vikings and the Chicago Bears, because you're pretty much both at 500. Well, the Bears are at 500, but the Vikings are pretty close, and I definitely think they could be 500, if not a little bit above that, in the next upcoming weeks. So, hopefully the Bears can figure some stuff out. Defense doing a good job. Offense, you got to figure it out though.
They got to do something right here, so we'll see what happens with that. All right, now moving on to the Seahawks and Rams. I know it's a tough game for you. Divisional matchup here between these two teams. The Rams, excuse me. I don't know why I said Saints there. Maybe I meant to say Seahawks. Anyway, the Rams come out here with the win 23-16 for Russell Wilson. Another off week for him. Going through, boy, this is like the first time I've seen Russell Wilson kind of go through back-to-back, I don't want to say bad starts. I mean, of course, he didn't play great, but back-to-back weeks where he just could not get anything going there, couldn't find a rhythm at all. That was kind of surprising to see right there. I mean, Jared Goff, not a bad day for him, but didn't throw any touchdowns, no picks either. But either way, though, for the Rams, they came out with the win. But for Seattle, their second straight loss here, 2-3 now on the road. So of course the road has been kind of not somewhat friendly to them. Rams are 4-0 at home. So of course when they play at home, they feel very good there. But for Seattle, still, you're hanging in there at 6-3. I get it. The Rams are that now. But still, though, 6-3 though at this point during the season. For Russell Wilson, is it time to hit the panic button? Not at all. The guy's going to be fine. Yeah. But still, though, you hate to see this happen to a guy that no doubt was in the MVP conversation. But unfortunately, though, it just wasn't meant to be for Seattle on Sunday.
Yeah. There's a lot of things wrong at the moment with the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, Russell, like you mentioned, has had 2 back-to-back kind of poor performances. Obviously, he is missing the running game. He's missing Hyde, Carson, which has really been bad for him. But also, you got to keep in mind, Russell's had 7 turnovers the last 2 games alone, fumbles and interceptions. So, I mean, obviously, those numbers are just not like him at all, like you mentioned. Obviously, you got to give credit to the LA Rams. I think they have overall at the moment a more solid team. I think the defense is definitely legit. Kind of reminds me of a few years ago when they went to the Super Bowl because of their defense. That's kind of the feeling I get from this team when I watch the game on Sunday. They have a lot of good players. Obviously, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, a lot of those guys. Good linebacker core. So. Obviously, Jared Goff is kind of a game manager for the most part. That's why he didn't really throw any touchdowns, but he didn't throw any picks either. They have a good running game. So they're just overall, at the moment, better running team, or a better just overall team, I should say. Obviously, injuries have plagued the Seahawks. Their pass defense is not very good. They're missing Quentin Dunbar, Shaquille Griffin. Obviously, 2 big losses, in the secondary as well. So, I think the bright side of being a Seattle Seahawks fan is, they still have a lot of pretty easy opponents, I would say, to end the season. I think they play the Washington football team. They played the Giants. They played the Jets. And then, obviously, they played the 49ers, the Rams, and the Cardinals one last time as well. And then I believe they played the Eagles. So those are the last games for the Seattle Seahawks. So a few of them will be hopefully kind of easy. But then again, those divisional games will be obviously a little bit tougher as well. So obviously it's a quick turnaround too for both the Seahawks and the Cardinals for tomorrow night when they play. So you're just gonna have to hope that Wilson will have a better game, and hopefully I think Hyde is playing, but hopefully Carson will be back as well, because I heard rumors that Lockett maybe not play because of a possible knee injury. So just next man up mentality. So kind of like the 49ers, the Seahawks haven't had nearly as many injuries as the 49ers, but they've definitely had their share of injuries this season as well.
Yeah, it's always tough when injuries kind of come to plague it, when they come to plague a team and stuff, especially if you were kind of riding a really good streak there to start the year. And then now here you are midway, through the year. Or I guess you can say we're past that point now, depending on when the bye week is going to happen for whatever team that's going to be. So, but again, though, for Seattle, like I said, for them, don't hit the panic button just yet. Just keep on hanging in there, like you mentioned there too, playing those teams that are kind of having not so good seasons, of course, like the Jets, the Giants, and the Washington football team, of course. It was really good to see Alex Smith back out there last Sunday, making his first start in almost over 2 years after he had that devastating leg injury. That was really good to see right there. But for Seattle, though, it's always kind of nice. You've been kind of riding this tough streak now, but luckily, though, towards the end of the season, you're at 6 wins there. No doubt that team can go 3-0 against all of those teams to at least put them at 9 wins. No doubt they could finish still with 10 or 11 wins. But not what you want, though, but it's better to get these struggles done and over with now rather than have them late in the season where you go into the playoffs and then you think, okay, we've been struggling towards the end of the season. Now how's it going to be for us in the playoffs? Because that's always going to be the concern right there. That's my concerns I had about with Chicago back in 2018. I know they were still doing a good job winning football games, but that offense still was not really playing spectacular towards the end of the stretch. But for Seattle, though, you have a really good quarterback there, and Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf. Tough day for him as well, but it is what it is. Tyler Lockett, same for him, but this team, though, they have a lot of good talent there. Defense, of course, needs work on, like we all know, but at the end of the day, though, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. If you have somewhat of a hump there in the middle of the season, just try and come out of that if you can. You still got a month and a half left of football left to play, so we'll see what happens with that. But either way, though, for Seattle, it is a quick turnaround, like you mentioned. And, of course, towards the end of our football talk, we always say, who you got? Well, guess what? The Cardinals and Seahawks.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a really fun matchup from that Sunday night matchup. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, it was. I'm excited for this game. I really am.
It should be a really good one for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Definitely try and see if I can catch some of it there. But Cardinals and Seahawks, this time, no. The Cardinals are heading off to Seattle rather than Arizona this time. Of course, the first time it didn't go so well for them, for Seattle, but this time they are going to be at home. Of course, the 12th man there won't be much of a thing because of the fans not being there because of COVID. But either way, though, being at home, that definitely still gives you that advantage there, I would say. So, the Cardinals, Seahawks, boy, I tell you what, these two teams, talking about the Cardinals earlier, that big win against Buffalo, that was really spectacular, of course. But you know what? The Seahawks, they've been in a rut lately, and that rut will end tomorrow night. I'll go with the Seahawks by a score of 28-21. Seahawks win.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to have to give the advantage to the Seattle Seahawks. I really don't see them losing 3 in a row. Obviously, the last 4, they've been 1-3, so I think they really need to get over the hump. And I think they will do that. Obviously, the 12th man's not there. I know it's a quick turnaround, but one reason why I believe in the Seahawks is because of Russell Wilson. I really think he's going to have a good game against the Cardinals. I think DK is going to be a little bit more involved. I think he's going to have a monster game tomorrow. But overall, I think it's going to come down to the wire. I mean, every game that I've seen this year, for the most part, that the Seahawks are in, have been pretty close for the most part. So I'm going to give the edge to the Seattle Seahawks. I have them winning 31-27.
All righty, and for our next game we have here, it is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. Chiefs, of course, having a good season so far. Raiders as well, they're hanging in there too at 6-3, but I'll give my upper hand to the Chiefs this time. When you have Patrick Mahomes there on that side, and then, of course, you have Tyreek Hill and just that dominating Chiefs offense. Defense, of course, has been doing a solid job for them at times throughout the season. For the Raiders, though, give credit to them on that team there with Derek Carr and John Gruden. But I will say that the Chiefs, they will win this one. Final score prediction, I'll go 30-24 Chiefs.
Yeah, I definitely think, obviously, it was kind of a weird game for the Kansas City Chiefs when they played the Raiders a few weeks ago. Obviously, I do think the Chiefs are probably going to win this game, too. I think they're just going to be more prepared. And also the fact, too, that I think the Raiders had 7 defensive players go on the COVID list.
They did, yeah.
Obviously, when that happens, that's not a really good sign for the football team. So obviously, some of those guys may come back to play on Sunday, but you never know. So it's an up in the air kind of situation, and we won't know until then. But I definitely think Chiefs are going to win this game, no problem. I'm going to give the edge to the Chiefs, and I have them winning. Let's just say 37-23.
Alrighty, and for our last game we have here, the Los Angeles Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rams traveling out to South Florida to play the Buccaneers there in Tampa. Buccaneers, a big win for them, like we already talked about there with Carolina, 46-23, and the Rams, a big divisional win for them against the Seattle Seahawks. Sorry about that. But for the Rams, though, that will not happen next Sunday. Tampa Bay, they've been riding high. That big win, they got momentum on their side. We'll see if they can kind of keep it going throughout the season. But I think Tampa Bay will get the win big time. Score prediction, I'll go 35-21. Tampa Bay.
This is going to be a really interesting game. I think both teams are pretty equally matched for the most part. Both have a good defense. Obviously, the offense is the stars are the receivers and the backs, and obviously the quarterbacks are great too, but they're more game managers for the most part. So it's a very, I would say, evenly matched game, and I'm really excited to watch it for sure. I'm going to give the edge to the Buccaneers too. I think they've kind of figured things out, and obviously they've been really inconsistent this year too, so they could lose by 40 points, and it wouldn't shock me either. But I think it's going to be a close game for the most part. I think Tom Brady's going to have another good game. I think he's going to get a lot of those same guys that he got involved in Carolina involved once again, and I think the Rams defense is really going to struggle against that. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I'm going to give the edge to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I have them winning 31-24.
Well, it definitely is going to be an interesting week for sure of football. I'm glad that the Bears don't play, so that kind of makes it a little nice. I don't have to suffer a 5th straight L. Finally, you start off 5-1, and then all of a sudden here you are at 5-5. I mean, honestly, that the Bears, it's not that when they were 5-1, it wasn't like that they were spectacular by any means, but still, though, just to see 5-1 on the standings was pretty damn nice. That I will say. When you have to come off your bye week and play the Packers, yeah, that's a really nice welcome back right there. Because, boy, that Packers team, Aaron Rodgers looks rejuvenated, even at 36, going to be 37 here just in a few weeks. So the dude's playing like he's 24, 25 years old, which gives me nightmares. Because that guy was dangerous back then, still is dangerous. But, I mean, hey, when you get older, you kind of start to change up a little bit. But either way, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I'm just glad I don't have to suffer a 5th straight L. That's just pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm hoping Seattle can bounce back. Obviously, it's going to be like a fun game, like we mentioned. 3 straight L's for the Seattle Seahawks. That would definitely be kind of rare. I can't really remember the last time that happened in the last few years. So, and obviously, it's the same way. Both of our teams start off really hot for the most part, and then over the last few weeks, they really have just struggled. It's been kind of weird to watch that happen. So,
yeah,
hopefully for both of our teams, they can figure it out. Obviously, you guys got to buy, and Seattle plays tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing the game, and hopefully Seattle can win it and go back on top of the division.
Definitely going to be interesting for sure. Can't wait to see how that's all going to play out. Well, we are going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll dive into the big NBA news and stuff. A draft is already underway and stuff. Some teams already selecting picks there. We'll get into that, and also some trades have already occurred here as well. And Klay Thompson, oh boy, is he going to be out for the season again, or is he going to be able to come back and play finally? That's going to be interesting to see. And James Harden, is he going to be on his way to Brooklyn, New York? Oh boy, that'd be really interesting right there. And Russell Westbrook, the same deal for him as well. Is he going to be traded here once again? And the Bucks, are they going to be competing as well finally for an NBA championship? And Chris Paul is expected to be dealt once again. All that coming up here next on Time Out with the Guys. Be right back. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Time Out with the Guys. Once again, I'm Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. Now diving into the NBA talk. Of course, it is a big night. We have the draft going on right now. Some teams already making their picks here. And, of course, the big name, of course, I think throughout this draft, no doubt, was LaMelo Ball. Of course, he is the youngest son of LeVar Ball, who's pretty much, made his name, well known started back in 2017 when he said he could beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. And when I first heard of this guy, I was just like, who the hell is this guy? First off, I had no idea. And then, of course, he's the father of, Lonzo Ball, who was really a big star there at UCLA. And, of course, when you say your son can beat Steph Curry one-on-one when he hasn't taken his first NBA dribble yet or even stepped out onto an NBA court, you're really setting the bar pretty high, I would say, right there. And then he gets selected by the Lakers, and Magic Johnson, who was at the time the president of basketball operations for the Lakers, saying someday we'll hang a retired number 2 banner there. But that ship was sailed pretty quickly, you could say. Yeah. But LaMelo Ball now he is going off to the Charlotte Hornets. He was taken 3rd overall. It's kind of hey LaMelo Ball. He's the 3rd of those of his brothers there. Lonzo being the 1st, LiAngelo being the 2nd, and now Melo getting taken 3rd overall. And it's kind of a funny coincidence here that we just talked about before we went or during our break. Michael Jordan is currently the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. So you think about LaMelo Ball, LeVar Ball is, of course, his father, and now, he's playing, for a team that is owned by the guy you said he can beat one-on-one. So
it's funny how life works.
It is funny how the life does work. So, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure maybe is the water under the bridge right now. I don't know. To Michael probably is because he said he can beat him one-on-one with just one leg, which I thought was a pretty spectacular comeback. I mean, it really wasn't a comeback because somebody asked him a question about it. It wasn't like he was just going to talk about it by him. He was going to bring it up by himself. But either way, though, it is a funny coincidence how that all worked out. But yeah, definitely been an interesting night so far. Of course, the Timberwolves, they did have the first overall pick, something, of course, they took advantage of by taking shooting guard Anthony Edwards. So that's, I think, going to be a good pick right there for him. Of course, with this Timberwolves team, kind of going through some retooling, changes there with the roster. Of course, we did see that they did acquire D'Angelo Russell from the Warriors at the trade deadline, which I thought that was a good move for them right there. And Karl Anthony Towns, a spectacular player for them as well, and kind of getting this team now to where you hope you can have it eventually. And I think Anthony Edwards, no doubt, is going to be a good pick or a good player for the Timberwolves out of Georgia. So that's a good pick for them, like I've already mentioned. But definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out as the season gets underway, and then maybe once it kind of start to get more into a normalcy here during the season. Definitely be interesting to see how this all is going to work out there for the T-Wolves.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I did like Anthony Edwards going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think, obviously, when you look at a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who they just got during the middle of the season, last season, obviously, I feel like LaMelo and D'Angelo Russell would kind of have a similar play style and be kind of weird for them to both kind of be on the same team as well as Karl Anthony Towns being there. So I definitely did like this pick a little bit better than obviously if LaMelo got drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So it gives the Timberwolves a guy that can shoot the ball but also can make plays for himself as well at the same time. So I definitely thought that was a good pickup. And the Warriors obviously had a really rough year last year without Klay Thompson, Steph Curry for most of the season, but now they get a big guy in James Wiseman, who I think, when you think about the Warriors the last few years, you can't really think of like a big-time center for the most part that's been really good. Obviously, they kind of had JaVale McGee here and there, and Andrew Bogut. They kind of fill the spot, but I think he's definitely a guy to kind of make some plays for himself down low. So I definitely like the pickup for the Warriors. I mean, obviously you knew they weren't really going to go after a guard or a shooting guard or anything like that. Maybe a small forward, but I definitely don't mind that they picked a center by any means. I think, if obviously fingers crossed Klay's going to be okay for the start of the season. Obviously we don't know the injury yet for him, but hopefully, Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green, Wiseman, and maybe Andrew Wiggins if they don't deal him out. That's a pretty good starting five for the most part. So, we're just going to have to wait and see how that plays out. Obviously, kind of like we mentioned, LaMelo Ball to Charlotte. I also don't mind that too. He played really good in Australia. I think he's going to be a good player for the Charlotte Hornets for the most part. So those are the top 3 picks in the draft so far, and obviously the picks are still coming in for the remainder of the night. But some really good young players. Hopefully, going to making their impact sooner than later once the NBA season starts at the end of December.
Absolutely, and kind of go back to the Warriors, like we talked about there. They never really kind of have that stable center, even during their times that they made the NBA Finals. We know that of course, they signed DeMarcus Cousins, who was coming off the Achilles tear when he played for the Pelicans. But then, of course, we knew he was going to miss probably most of the first half, which he did, and then came back, but he suffered some on and off injuries still, and then he came back for the NBA Finals. I think he might have even suffered an injury right there. But overall, though, for the Warriors, good to see him get that stable center, hopefully. We know what James Wiseman kind of went through some drama there at Memphis, getting suspended, and then only just starting 3 games, playing in 3 games too, but really in those 3 games, he was spectacular, averaging almost 20 points a game. So I know it was 3 games, but this guy was no doubt built to kind of go to the pros right away, you could say. Of course, I've always kind of been, an advocate of guys playing at least 2 years at the college level in order to get, in order to declare for the draft. But either way, though, I think for James Wiseman, that's a good place for him to go. Definitely learn a lot, from guys like Steph Curry, like we mentioned, Klay Thompson. Despite, again, prayers to him, he's going to be all right. That was not what you wanted to see right there. But and Draymond Green too, who's kind of taking a more leadership role throughout his time there with Golden State. So no doubt, Golden State is looking to get back to contending, which would definitely be kind of cool to see. I know people are getting tired of them dominating the West and most of the NBA, of course, going to the NBA Finals for 4 consecutive seasons. Maybe was it 5? I mean, it was just crazy how they were making the finals so many years. But that shows that the greatness that they have. And like I said, you have to appreciate greatness, even if it gets kind of boring at times. But still, though, looking back on it, you're going to be thinking, whoa, that was a really fun, time to watch that team when they dominated.
Yeah.
So that's always good to see. So hopefully that works out there for the Warriors with James Wiseman. Like I said, he's definitely going to a good team with a lot of good players, like I said, with Steph, Klay, and Draymond. So those guys are proven winners, and no doubt they can help James Wiseman get to that level where he would want to be. And, of course, my Chicago Bulls taking Patrick Williams there with the 4th overall pick. I'll tell you what, this is an interesting pick here because Patrick Williams played in 29 games, but he didn't start a single one. He was the ACC 6th Man of the Year last year, so that was, hey, that's not bad to see right there, but averaging just over 9 points a game, so that was a little interesting, like I said, but hey, we'll see what happens here. We've seen a lot of these guys, come out of the draft. Maybe they didn't have the numbers that they wanted to have. But definitely, though, it's not about, hey, now you're in the NBA now. Let's go see what you can do. And for the Bulls, they see something in this kid where I think he could do something spectacular. So we'll see what happens with that. Kind of takes me back to Zach LaVine back at UCLA. Played in 37 games, only started 1, just averaging over 9 points during his college career in his lone season in college. So maybe I'm not trying to compare those two now and say that's how Patrick Williams is going to be, but still – it's not all about starting games and scoring points. It's about how are you going to impact the team. So I think Patrick Williams still has room to, of course, grow as a player, no doubt. So that would definitely be interesting to see how that's all going to play out. But yeah, definitely going to be an interesting night for sure to see what teams are still going to do, or some teams still going to try and make those trades, trade back, and see what they can acquire in that. That's all going to be really interesting to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of young guys making their impact on their new teams, and sometimes too, it's interesting how you could have a number 1 pick, and they could be just complete bust, and then you could have guys deep in the draft who end up being superstars in the making. So it's just kind of weird how that works out sometimes. But I think a lot of these guys that are obviously going to get drafted tonight, hopefully they'll make their impact, from game 1. But it's always fun seeing these, the rookies get drafted for the first time on new teams, especially the teams that have had rough seasons, for either one season or multiple seasons, like the New York Knicks. So, obviously, it's just an awesome time to, be a basketball fan, like I mentioned. But, still a lot of picks to go.
It definitely is going to be interesting to see how this is all going to play out for the rest of the night. So definitely keep an eye on that for sure. Now kind of moving on to some player news and stuff, of course, James Harden. He did reject a 2-year contract worth just over $100 million, $103 million to be exact. Boy, that's over $50 million a year when you look at it. I mean, boy, who would say no to that?
That's
but
insane.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I just said that's insane. That's a lot of money.
Gosh, if I was offered a contract, I'd be like, sign me up, please.
Yeah.
Well, but I think you have to look at it from James Harden's standpoint. So he's been with Houston since 2012. They were a team that was kind of on the uprise, trying to get back to contending. And then, of course, they brought in Dwight Howard for a couple seasons. Eventually, he goes off there to Atlanta, then bounces around from team to team before ending up with the Lakers last season. But with James Harden, though, with Houston, at this point in his career, he was hoping to kind of accomplish getting that championship. But right now, though, it hasn't worked out for him. I don't know if he's at that point right now where he just says, you know what, with Houston, the course, the time has ran its course. It's time for me to go somewhere else and compete. So I think maybe he's at a point there where he wants to be traded to the Nets, of course, and if he was to be traded to the Nets, that would reunite him with Kevin Durant. Of course, KD and James Harden played there with OKC back when Harden was drafted there in 2009. Of course, he was reunited there with Westbrook last season. But of course, with Houston, I think they're at a point right now where you have a new coach now, so they might be looking to make some moves right there. Maybe he wants to kind of build his own team there as well. But for James Harden, no, when you reject a 2-year contract worth over $100 million, boy, if that really tells you you do not want to be there right now, that really takes a lot of guts to say no, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, when I saw this a few days ago that he rejected a 2-year contract worth that much money, I literally couldn't believe it. But that just showed you how badly he really does want to be traded. Obviously, preferably to the Brooklyn Nets, obviously with Kyrie and KD. But I would be surprised if the Rockets were to trade him to his desired destination, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, the team gets to control where he goes. Obviously, when Kawhi was, demanding trades and stuff when he was, when he was injured, he wanted to be traded to, certain places, but then they ended up just dealing him to the Raptors because it was the best move for the Spurs at the time. So, I think if the Rockets get a deal from the Sacramento Kings that makes it worthwhile, then I think they would do it in a heartbeat. It just depends on what's going to be best for the team. Obviously James Harden would love to be traded to the Nets, but I don't think they're going to give him what he really wants at the end of the day because they have all the leverage in this position. He signed a massive contract. He still owes them for a few years. So basically, they said, I remember the quote is things could get uncomfortable for James Harden and possibly Russell Westbrook too. It seems like the market's kind of dead for him at the moment, but obviously James, a lot of people will go after him for sure. But the leverage is controlled by the Rockets right now. They might just hold him. They might just let him continue to hold his contract, but obviously that can lead to bad paths as well as James maybe just starts to not care as much anymore. Obviously, the fan culture there, it's going to be interesting with COVID and stuff too, but obviously when the fans can come back, how are they going to take it? Obviously, a guy that doesn't want to be there, well, we don't want you there. So it's going to be kind of a weird dilemma for the Houston Rockets and James Harden to kind of figure out. I think he's going to be a Rocket for the start of the season, but at the end of the season, I think he is a part of another team now.
Yeah, it kind of takes me back to the Carmelo Anthony days there with Denver and stuff. Hearing all the trade rumors, Carmelo wants out, and then all of a sudden at the trade deadline, they were able to work out a deal there with the Knicks back in February of 2011. So for James Harden, boy, yeah, that's definitely going to be something to be kind of looking out for and stuff. Is if he is still with the Rockets at the start of the season, how's that all going to play out? How's that relationship going to be there with those teams? So I definitely would, definitely keep my eye on that for sure. See how that's all going to work out. Is James Harden going to go out there and give 100% of the effort? And of course, I think it just depends too what the team can do around him as well. And I think he's just at a point where, look, they couldn't compete with the Warriors, and then they brought in Westbrook, and then in all fairness, the pandemic really put a halt to things. It put a halt to teams having their success and then having to regroup quickly there down in Orlando, having to quarantine in when you got down there and just going through all these protocols. That certainly did make things a lot more harder. But in order to get through that season, you had to follow those procedures. So, but for James Harden, I think he's at a point now where, look, he's been with the Rockets since 2012, and he's at a point where it's like, look, we haven't accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and the only way I can accomplish what I want to accomplish is if I go somewhere else and play. And I think with the team like the Nets, because we know that they're not going to trade away Kyrie or Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, of course, is there as well. So maybe could they work out a deal with that? We'll see what happens with that. We know that with Jordan, he is a really good player there for them as well. But overall, though, for James Harden, you just don't want to see that. But I think now these days, players, they're going to be pretty vocal about that. They don't want to play for a team anymore. They're not going to be quiet about it. They want to get out of there with whatever team that they're on. Look at Anthony Davis, for example, when he was with the Pelicans and he was hurt, and towards the end of the season, he wore a shirt that said, "That's all, folks." So he was really forcing his way out of there. And now I'm not trying to say they're being selfish by doing that, but when you go up to a team, to your general manager, and say, "Hey, things haven't worked out for me like I wanted them to here, but can you possibly trade me?" And they say no. It's like, okay, you basically leave me with no choice then, So I'm gonna go to the media and say I'm not gonna sign here when I hit the market. So you're really putting the team in a tough spot, but you were put though in that spot to put them in a tough spot. So I think for James Harden, he's at a point where the Rockets said, "Hey, we really want to invest in you." He said, "Nope, not going to happen." So he's basically just going to do whatever it takes to get out of there. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye out for. And now kind of shifting to another star player there in Russell Westbrook. So obviously if James Harden gets traded, what's Westbrook going to want then too? And we know that Michael Jordan, of course, like we talked about him owning the Hornets and stuff, he would really like to have him on that team. And of course, with the Wizards, of course, discussing a deal with Westbrook as well for a John Wall trade. So Westbrook, has those options there with the Hornets and with the Wizards possibly. So no doubt he could find his way possibly out east somewhere if that was to be the case. But boy, I tell you what, though, if Westbrook gets traded here once again, boy, that's going to be really something to watch out for. Houston's definitely going to be undergoing a bit of a, I guess you can say, rebuilding, because you traded away those two star players from your team. But either way, though, I think for Houston, maybe it's time for them to hit the restart button in a way. Yeah. So either way, though, if you trade a guy like Russell Westbrook and James Harden, that's really going to put your team there in a tough spot to try and get the high draft pick for next year and just see where you go from there. Because with James Harden and Chris Paul, that didn't work out. With James Harden and Westbrook, it was, to me, it looked fairly well at times. But I think in the playoffs, though, it really just didn't look spectacular there most of the time, of course, with guys being hurt. Westbrook was hurt. And so either way, though, for James Harden, you can bring in all these players that you want. Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Westbrook. Things haven't worked out. Harden wants out. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and, I think something, too, that I would like to mention as well is obviously Mike D'Antoni, when he was coaching there, obviously had the small ball lineup. And, that's something that, Westbrook hasn't really been used to in his playing career. So that could obviously have impacted some struggles for him in the playoffs. Obviously, he didn't shoot great at all. But he's kind of been known as that aggressive point guard to get to the rim, but also kind of dish it to the big guy and get some easy dunks and easy passes and easy scores. So, it would be interesting if Houston does run it back with these guys. Obviously, they're here for the long haul. So if they do run it back, maybe try to get a center in the draft. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what they decide to do. But I think maybe the small ball lineup ultimately it didn't work out to plan. I mean, during the regular season, of course, they had games where they looked incredible. But during the playoffs, it was easy to figure out for the most part. And, we saw it. Length took over, especially when the Lakers were playing. So, it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the Rockets do. They have a decision to make for both these guys, and they definitely have to get what's best for the team back in order for it to make sense for either of them. So, obviously, I think the Hornets are probably out of the mix now for Russell Westbrook just because they drafted LaMelo, but you never know. I think probably the most likely thing would probably be Wizards at this point. Maybe the Wizards aren't so happy with John Wall's rehab. Obviously, it seems like he hasn't played in like 2 years or something.
He's been out for a long time.
So, maybe they're just not comfortable with his rehab or they might think he's not going to be as explosive or he's not going to shoot the ball as well. Who knows? But I would say that's probably the most likely thing that we see. But kind of some two older guys who it's kind of crazy because you just see, think about it, and it's almost like they they came into the league yesterday, but now they're pretty older vets in this league, and it's the market's not really quite there for Westbrook. It seems like only 2 or 3 teams are really interested, but if this was 2 years ago, everybody would be interested in him.
Oh, so definitely.
It's just kind of an interesting phase of life, but it shows you kind of how the years can change for these players, and it's interesting too because Westbrook really hasn't experienced any sort of season-ending injury or anything like that for the most part in his career. So it seems like, he still has that explosiveness as well. So I don't know if it's really just strictly based off of the fact that he has been shooting poorer and poorer as kind of the years have gone on. But, it seems like there would be more of a market rather than just 2 or 3 teams for a guy who just won an MVP only a few years ago.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. I think when you look at Russell Westbrook, a guy, of course, he has had, of course, those occasional injuries there with with the torn meniscus, having those knee surgeries. And then I know he did break his hand with the Thunder back in 2014-15. So he's definitely had some injuries there during the season. But no, he's never had like that devastating season-ending injury like a torn ACL, a ruptured Achilles. But no, I think for Westbrook, you would imagine that the market would be higher for him. But I think teams may be at a point where it's like, look, Russell Westbrook, he's a really good player, but being 32 years old now, in the league since 2008, so I think they're just kind of at a point where he is in his prime years, but they don't want to then get him where he's maybe good for just for a season or two, and then all of a sudden he starts to decline in a way, or he's not the player that he once was. So I think teams are kind of looking at more of a long-term approach rather than just kind of a short-term. Now, of course, if you're looking at a short-term approach, that is going to be a really good trade to get right there if you can work something out there with Houston. But yeah, definitely just it's going to be a crazy short off season, whatever you want to call it. So, but boy, it's definitely going to be something to watch for. But yeah, I just can't imagine what Houston's probably going through right now. It's pretty hectic there, you could say, right now. Now moving up north a little bit to Milwaukee, they are getting Drew Holiday from the New Orleans Pelicans. And, of course, in that trade, Eric Bledsoe and George Hill and a couple picks there are being sent to the Pelicans. So not a bad trade, you could say, for both sides there. Obviously, with the Pelicans, when they made that trade there with the Lakers, acquiring Brandon Ingram, Alonzo Ball. And then, of course, they had the first overall pick, and no doubt they took Zion Williamson. So for the Pelicans, their future is still looking bright, I would say, right now. And then, of course, Drew Holiday, no doubt, that is a tough loss, you could say, right there. But still, I think when you kind of want to go approach just a long-term thing, I think that is the right trade to get. And for Drew Holiday, going to a really dominant team like Milwaukee, that's a really good place to go right there because Giannis, he is entering the last year of his contract, so we'll see how that all turns out when that time does come. But boy, I'll tell you what, though, Drew Holiday going to a really good Bucks team, boy, that team is going to be really exciting to watch for. And hopefully, I know I was really talking about this, before the pandemic hit. I really wanted that Lakers and Bucks finals. That's what I really wanted to see. Even as a Bulls fan, I want to see Milwaukee get that championship if that was to be the case. But boy, I'll tell you what, Drew Holiday is going to the Bucks, and that could get them over that hump, possibly that playoff hump that that they've been in the past couple seasons. Giannis, obviously, the 2-time reigning MVP. So hey, he's going to a great place right there. And Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton. So Milwaukee definitely got a good one right here, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the pickup for the Bucks. They're obviously being aggressive, knowing how important it is to win now because that's kind of what Giannis is looking for. Obviously, they had a good run in the regular season. Really did kind of just collapse in the playoffs, and obviously you could blame it on the fact that they didn't play for a couple months. That they just weren't they weren't quite there on the basketball court. Obviously, there was the whole Milwaukee situation that was going on too when they protested. So they could have just not been quite there to just mentally, to really play basketball. And that's okay sometimes. But you can definitely tell that the Bucks are looking to win now. They know how important it is with Giannis and his expectations for the team and how great of a player he is, that, it's basically championship or bust for him. So I love the pickup for Drew Holiday, kind of obviously Eric Bledsoe and George Hill. They were reliable guys, but not anybody that would probably hit like a game-winning shot for the most part. I think Drew Holiday has that potential, and he also loves to play defense too. So I think obviously Giannis, Defensive Player of the Year. I think having another defensive-oriented guy too that can also score the ball and pass it out and just get to the bucket, I think that's going to be really helpful for Giannis in the long term. And also, yeah, I just think it's going to be, a great acquisition, for the Bucs. I think they're still going to be a really good team. Obviously, Chris Middleton is still there as well, and obviously he's an incredible shooter. So I really like the pickup. Obviously, they were trying to go after Bogdan as well, but there was something happened. It was a sign and trade, and I don't think he really wanted to go to Milwaukee, it seems like. So, I mean, obviously he's kind of missing out on an opportunity. I think that would have been obviously one of the best spots. I mean, yeah, it's Milwaukee, but then again, if you really want to win and also make a good amount of money, because he's definitely going to get paid. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of, you get the best of both worlds playing with a guy like Giannis and other talented guys as well as yourself. But they also have a chance to go to the playoffs, because that's something he's never experienced in Sacramento before. So, kind of a head scratcher there. But I guess we'll have to see what happens on Friday for sure. But yeah, definitely like the move by the Bucs, and we'll have to see kind of what else they do in the draft tonight, as well as if they make any more moves before the season starts.
Yeah, we really think that. It's like if I was playing for a team that like Sacramento, like let's just say, okay, they've been kind of in this rut over the past couple of seasons, and they're looking to kind of just keep retooling the roster in order to get to the playoffs, for that consecutive years, if they ever get to that point. And like, let's just say the GM approached me and is like, hey, we're going to trade you to Milwaukee, or I'd be like, oh, like, wow, like that's really cool. And look, I get it. Maybe Sacramento's meant so much to Bogdan. And, because when teams come up there with a certain team, especially because he did play overseas for quite some time before he did translate to the NBA. But you would think, though, that, boy, you've been playing with a team that's been struggling over the past couple seasons, and now you want to get to a point where you want to get to the playoffs, because you are 28 years old right now. So you're kind of at a point where you want, in your career, where you really want to start competing for a championship. And so you would think that would kind of be the mindset possibly, but that's just not the case right now, at least for him. We'll see what happens there in free agency. But, boy, you can trade to a team like Milwaukee. Boy, I'd be kind of ecstatic. Now, look, I get it. Milwaukee is not a big market for the NBA. It's not the big market like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, whatever big city that there is. But still, Milwaukee, though, for a team like that, though, you're playing with the reigning MVP who's won it back-to-back years. So I'd definitely be ecstatic if I was going to be traded to a team like that. But maybe he has other plans. We'll see what happens with that. But, yeah, there's a bit of a head-scratcher right there. You could definitely say that. But it's like this when you get traded to a team. It's like, oh, like, wow, it's kind of exciting. Now, look, I get it. The first trade is kind of tough. Maybe Sacramento's meant so much to him, like I said. But, yeah, just kind of confusing at the same time, too, because you're at a point where you want to start competing for a championship. But only time will tell. We'll see what happens when free agency does roll around. Maybe he will decide to maybe end up with Milwaukee. But, like I said, only time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think Milwaukee's still in the position to go on, obviously a deep run next season. I mean, when you have Giannis on your team, basically putting anybody around you, you're just going to make that team good. So the Bucs are doing all they can to, pick up guys. Drew Holiday, a great example of that, and also keep Chris Middleton. So, it's kind of like a big three in a way. For the most part, I think all the three of those guys are very talented, especially Giannis and Middleton. We've seen what they've been able to do, but they've always kind of been missing that one guy. And I think Drew Holiday simply can't be that guy for them. So, we'll have to kind of wait and see once the season gets going. It would be kind of another weird season. Obviously they won't play as many games. But I think it's going to be a little bit more of a normal season than it was last year. I don't think it could be any weirder than it was last year for sure. So I'm just excited for NBA basketball to be back, and I'm sure a lot of those guys are going to be happy to kind of play in their own arenas too, and kind of have a home atmosphere rather than playing in a bubble. Obviously, a lot of those guys will have to be safe about when they go out and things like that. I know Adam Silver probably has a great game plan. For the league whenever, he's ready to kind of share that opportunity. But, it's just going to be good to kind of have basketball back once again. It's crazy that, the season ended in mid-October and we're getting it back not even a month and a half later. So it's very kind of, surreal that it's happening so soon. Because usually it's a few months of no basketball and you're kind of just, looking around, looking at your fingers, not really sure what to do. But there's been a lot of sports this year. There was a moment where there was no sports, and then there was a moment of a lot of sports, and then now we got football, and then we got basketball coming up soon, and so it's been interesting how all the leagues have been able to make it work. Obviously, NFL not still not doing the best of job, but
we knew that was going to be a bit of a mess.
Yeah,
we could predict that, but
it's just been it's been good to see, and obviously I'm looking forward to the start of the season.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be interesting for sure. Going to be a quick turnaround. Like I think it's no shock to us. December 22nd is going to be the projected start date, so it's kind of nice that they are going to get a 72 game season in. So it's kind of almost near the 82 game, which it would have been, but then once you kind of get back on track to getting that regular season in underway with a full 82 game season, that would definitely be good to see, and good to kind of see things getting back to somewhat normalcy in sports. Obviously, we're still in these very challenging times, and I think I read somewhere with fans coming back to the arenas. I think they're gonna do like a start off with a small capacity of them if they can, if it's gonna be safe or not. Obviously, that's going to depend on, I think, probably, I'm not trying to get into politics now, but the governors of the state, the mayors of the cities, people like that kind of want to make sure that it's going to be cool, because no doubt, if they do invite fans back in, that could be a super spreader event, and that could be really, that could be disastrous, which would be terrible. So definitely, I think you want to consult with the people that are controlling the states, making sure that the cities are in full control, but definitely going to be interesting for sure to see. But just kind of getting back, though, to somewhat normalcy here in the NBA, playing at your home arena, which would be nice. I get it. Fans won't be there. That's going to be pretty awkward to hear, because we can both admit that the NBA bubble down in Orlando was very spectacular there. That was really cool to see. But, no, definitely going to be good to see the NBA get back. Kind of at a shortened off season, but, hey, when you had months off because of the pandemic, I'm sure the players knew that it was going to be a quick turnaround. Possibly, but yeah, having no sports there for the time being was really not so much fun. And then, of course, when they all came back, they all kind of came back there at once. There, baseball, NBA, and then of course NFL was starting up in September. So you had basically all these sports happening there once. Hockey too, of course.
Yeah.
So it was kind of overwhelming at one point if you're a sports fan, because you're trying to watch all these games. But it is kind of good to see baseball, the World Series, the Dodgers winning that, which was cool to see, and then having their off season now. Which is nice, and then of course NBA going through their draft right now, and then having their shortened off season, kind of getting back to starting up here. So that'll be really cool to see. And once fans are allowed to go back to the stadiums, arenas, baseball fields, that will be really fun to see. And because we know fans, they do make the difference there at those places. There, they really get the team kind of going in a different direction. If one big play happens, fans start going crazy there, and that could really change the momentum possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, for the most part, the bubbles, they kind of made it work with no fans, having the virtual sound, and the big graphics that pop out when if it's a home game. So I like the effort that they did for sure, but yeah, it's definitely not the same without fans. I mean, you watch old playoff games, obviously in the NBA and even the NFL, and you can tell it's just a crazy atmosphere. So hopefully we can get back to that sooner than later. Hopefully there's a vaccine soon. It gets distributed sooner than later as well. Yeah. We just got to get out of this year for the most part, get back to living life, because I think a lot of us, like we mentioned over and over on the show, are just tired of 2020, tired of coronavirus, tired of the politics and everything. We just kind of want life to go back to normal. So yeah, that's what we're looking forward to, and hopefully we can do that.
Definitely will. It's definitely been a challenging year for sure. I know many people just want to get the year over with, but it's definitely been a year of self-reflection for a lot of people like myself, and then just having things taken for granted that you didn't expect that were going to be even taken away from you. So that was something I definitely learned a lot, and just want to live every day, the best way you possibly can. And tomorrow we know what's going to bring, so you just always got to be ready for the unexpected. But certainly, though, like I said, it's been a challenging year. But don't let it be a year of it was all bad. Let it be a year of self-evaluation, a lot of learning, and then apply that here into 2021. So hopefully 2021 will definitely be a year of a bit better for some people. I know it's been very challenging, like I've already said a couple times. But, hey, it can only get better, right? So we'll see what happens there with that. But, no, it's been definitely a good show for sure. I definitely enjoyed talking NBA. Boy, I finally got to talk about the NBA draft for once. Matt Nagy, you got to do something with that really bad offense of yours. I'm glad you surrendered the play calling duties, but that didn't really work out either. So we got to do something with that offense. Do something there. Tank for Trevor if you can. I mean, it's kind of maybe too late for that. The Jets might get lucky. Unless he decides to stay at Clemson. Hey, that's probably not a bad idea. I would say, at Clemson if I was Trevor Lawrence, if the Jets had that first overall pick, because I would not want to go there with that team.
I wouldn't want to play for the Jets.
Yeah, no. I like New York City.
Nobody can
love
turn that franchise around.
No, God. I love New York City. I love it a whole lot. It's a fun place to be. But, their football teams, though, not so good. Anyway, it's been a good show. Can't wait to be back here next week. Talk some more NBA football and stuff. We'll see what happens with more COVID cases possibly happening around the league as well. But either way, though, it's been a good show. He is Carter Foley. I am Brad Burton. This has been Time Out with the Guys. Be back here next week. Take care. Have a good night.
Realized we didn't talk about it because I made the graphic, but I realized we